as we've looked for one intersection in one topic, and that is how is there a bridge between from the educational solutions needed in the future between esports and STEM, coding, and that entire world? And particularly, how are we moving forward in a world where we have to somehow administer remote learning? So joining me now are Rick Suarez, president at United American Steel Company, but in this conversation, really in his role as Stay Plugged In, a group that has really worked hard in that intersection I just mentioned. CJ Collins, owner of Charlotte Phoenix CLT Esports, and CJ is the quintessential gamer. Many a late night have we been gaming. He knows this front to back, but he was also a participant in what you called, he was the coach in what you heard earlier is the YTech program. And John Brock, owner and founder of Tabris, and he's also the co-owner of Envy Gaming and an angel investor. These three gentlemen have had so many touch points into esports and education, and we're going to bring those all together now in this conversation. We can lose the slide. I'm going to tee it up really simply with one thing, and then I'm going to ask some quick questions of you all. So I don't think we need to re-emphasize how much the world has changed in the last 4 months because of COVID. And education is evolving before our very eyes. In Charlotte alone, and for those not from Charlotte, I'm sure you're going through the very similar things. We are waiting, and we waited intently on the governor's decrees on what could and couldn't happen in the coming fall school year. Then we waited on our individual counties. North Carolina has 100 counties, each individually making the decisions with their best interests and capabilities in mind. And we're now coming up with a model where it's not just what we've gone through, but into the foreseeable future, there is going to be this element of remote learning. We jumped together and created a program called YTAC, the Youth Technology Apprenticeship Camp, where we jumped into action in partnership with those groups and CMS, the school system, to say, can we create a model where we jump into action in a time of great need, where the curriculum and the remote system isn't all that set up, and we meet the kids where they are, with esports being a bridge to that of STEM education and apprenticeship and workforce development. It's a program that was highly diverse, both in people of color and in female versus male. And it was something that really worked incredibly well, and they were paid to do it. So there's an element of the future model there. I think my one punchline before I go and ask each one of these gentlemen one question each on their respective areas is, if you are in the education field and you are trying to innovate and do things in this new model that has been forced upon us now, all I'll say is you cannot take what you used to do and then just do it via Zoom. It does not work that way. It cannot work that way. You cannot outsource elements of teaching solely to parents that are not trained and certified in those areas. There are so many things. So you have to think about the Zoom, the remote learning requirements and all of that, those things, as almost a rewrite of breaking down all of the programs that used to be done before it and reconstructing them in a way that will work from an education remote learning perspective. With that being said, I want to start with John Brock, J4 as we refer to him, to tee up the first of these three questions we're going to ask. J4, you have been immersed in esports for the last 5 years with your relationship with Envy, the touch points and all of that, and even more so in the last 4 months. Can you quickly tell us the Envy story, but really explain to us, especially for those that maybe are focused on education but don't really know much about esports, the importance of it in this conversation?
Sure. Well, first of all, just to clarify, gaming versus esports. Esports is competitive video gaming at a professional level, typically in an organized format like a tournament with a specific goal, generally winning the tournament or prize money. Lots of people are involved in this. Twitch, which is an Amazon company, YouTube, owned by Google, Facebook, are platforms for esports and gaming. Activision Blizzard, which I think is now a $70 billion company. Epic, Riot, they publish these games. ESL, DreamHack, Major League Gaming are big event organizers. Sony, Intel, Microsoft, they make the backbone of a lot of the hardware for it.
Now, hold on, Jay. For are you telling me this isn't just a thing for nerds to do in their basement? Are you telling me there's an industry around this?
This is a massive industry. This is, I mean, when you look at just, you take one game like Call of Duty, I mean, it's bigger than, the James Bond. It's bigger than Star Wars. It's bigger than those two put together. It's been around for 20 years. They sell games every year. People play the games. They watch people play games. They go to the tournaments for these games. It's a massive part of industry, and it's just now starting to come into the limelight, and people are starting to realize how big it is. And it's extremely important, I think, for parents to understand that there's many careers across many specialties at many companies, and we need to communicate that to the kids who are learning as well, for sure. Envy, which is a professional esports team, also includes the Dallas Fuel, which is the shirt I'm wearing right now, for Overwatch, and the Dallas Empire for Call of Duty. We play in these games. We compete, and again, people watch us. We've won 72 championships across 13 different games, I think, so far. And I got involved 4 years ago here in Charlotte, and we've grown massively since then. With respect to what we're talking about now, COVID definitely had an impact on gaming and on esports, especially, as is the case with every industry, halting all live events. But esports and video games in general are digitally native. So we were still able to compete. We competed from apartments rather than from arenas. We were still able to connect with fans. We were still able to put on digital events. And in fact, esports was much better at that than probably the rest of the world, because it's how we started. The publishers are still publishing games, and people are gaming at significant levels. And this is, I think, another important thing for parents and society to realize. We don't have too much information on it, but we have some good stats. Twitter had a 71% increase in gaming conversation in April, compared to where it was in February. So pre-COVID to sort of post-COVID.
That was probably just CJ alone, doing that.
And CJ can probably talk much more specifically about that. But Xbox grew to 90 million active monthly users. Tencent, which owns Riot, had a 31% increase in sales. This is all March and April. When the rest of the world was struggling, gaming and esports grew. And that's just during COVID. It's grown from 300 million viewers to 500 million viewers just in the last 3 years. It's going to grow to 700 million viewers in the next 3 years again. The growth is explosive. People are doing it. And I think that when you realize how many kids are doing it, which anyone here who has some kids, I'm sure you know that, gaming is where kids already are. It's where they're choosing to spend their time, their free time. And now, post-COVID, more than ever. So as we think about how we want to reach them, this is where they're at. So this is where we need to be to do it.
Jay Ford, that is a perfect transition for me to then go to question number 2. This is going to go over to CJ. We refer to him as Pathfinder or the coach. And the coach is a humble dude, but he actually, for probably the better part, if not more than a decade, was in the Army, and he actually helped design the Army's esports program. He knows this front to back. And as we transition from that last part of esports is hot, and the relevance to education is you have to meet the kids where they are. Well, this is where the kids are, right, CJ? And you had an opportunity to dive into this YTech program as the esports coach during the morning, where after we recruited primarily in Title I schools of kids not planning to go to college, they came in and they spent the morning with you learning how to play these different games, learning how to play them better in some cases, and competing school versus school, but also learning things from you. And then they had a competition to design their own game, thanks to our partners from Cary, North Carolina, Epic Games. Many might know they've built this thing called the Unreal Engine. And then all afternoon, they were with our instructors, learning the importance of STEM and how to code. So all of that was their entire day that they were paid as an apprenticeship stipend to do. But talk a bit about meeting those kids where they were, the thing they were passionate about, and why you think that was important, and how that month where you spent for this last cohort we launched during the time of COVID, how it had impact, not just on them and where they were, but enticed them into STEM and made education more interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Tarek. I appreciate it. I'm actually meeting the kids where they are right now. So we have 10 kids here, and they're in a mini camp, and they're learning to do. And we're gonna turn the camera for you guys. Essentially, these kids are out here, and they're learning how to video edit right now. So they're doing some basic video editing stuff. And we got the programs on the computers. These are the same computers we used for that YTAC program. And really this holistic program of how do we teach these kids to have the skills that we need for the esports careers, right? How to video edit it, how to what else? How to play the actual games that they're inside of, how to cast, how to produce the matches from the standpoint of being able to get the camera angles going and doing those things. So we're here, and really this program is just a smaller version of what YTAC was, right? We gave them, the PCs, the computers, and the mouses and the keyboards and the controllers, and we're teaching them how to play the games, just like we did for YTAC. And it was awesome, and it's awesome today because we're able to kind of see and watch that growth in every little period. And these videos that they're creating right now, they're kind of like mini vlogs of their experiences of the mini camp right now. And it's been really, really cool to see them watch, learn, and edit those pieces and have a product where they can go and show their parents at the end of this, like, hey, Mom, this is what I learned to do today at esports camp.
That is awesome. So that's a great transition to the last question, right? We talked to J4 about how hot it is, and this is where kids are. We talked to CJ quickly about this is where they are. And when we have them intrigued and they're there, we can show them how esports is interconnected in amazing ways to STEM, how everything they love about it is because of coding. Someone coded it all up. I think the final question goes to you, Rick. You've done a lot of work with SPIN, your organization, and all kinds of other things where now all of that isn't for nothing. And guess what? There's also relevance beyond just going into the workforce and having the training that teaches you STEM and how to code and getting a job in a bank or healthcare or energy tech company, but also in the world of travel, youth sports, and getting a football or basketball scholarship to college. This is all stuff that now esports, right, is not just a relevant piece, but it's a significant piece in almost all our major universities and colleges. Tell us a little bit about that before we close this thing up. And you're muted still, Rick. Perfect.
There you go. I'm a novice at the computer, as you can tell. But anyway, thank you for having me on. In respect to the future for esports, I'm in a hotel room now, as you could probably tell, watching my middle son play travel sports with baseball. But it's a massive industry. J4 kind of alluded to the fact that what it looks like at the pro level. At the collegiate side, you can look at some of the organizations that kind of run the leagues there, if you will. The National Association of Collegiate Esports, NACE for short. In 2016, I think they had about 6 teams, and currently they have over 200 teams. From a college opportunity financially, in terms of scholarship dollars and aid, currently there's over 200 schools that offer upwards of $15 million in financial scholarships specifically for esports. So to me, I see this as a massive opportunity. I think the key is to let the parents kind of understand the space more and more and educate them as to what it can provide for their kids. And I think Charlotte's a great community to do that, to build a facility there in which kids can come in from all around the country, showcase their talents within the esports realm. That's what all other traditional sports currently do. That's why I'm here in Atlanta watching my son play baseball. It's known, it's a fact. This is how that recruiting process works. So being able to do that, I think, and incorporate that into the scene here in Charlotte, I think would be a huge component and a huge win for a number of families that have kids that this is what they're doing now more than ever before. And the statistics are there. J4 kind of alluded to it. When they're done with school, because they're missing some of that social component that typically comes with going to school, unfortunately, now they're virtually learning, this is their way of reaching out too. So inevitably, they're going to be online. They're going to be online playing with their friends, and this is how they kind of get into it. Well, the same thing happens in college. And that's why so many colleges have gravitated towards this. They do realize that a startup cost for an esports program is relatively small, but the tuition dollars that it can build in and that retention component, because now you have students that are engaged, right? They're doing something that ordinarily that school would not have offered for them. Just like any other club, whether it be music, math, whatever, or sport. That engagement is critical, in my opinion, now more than ever. And even at the lower levels, look at middle schools and high schools and what some of these kids unfortunately may experience over the fall. Where's that engagement coming from? You know, so at a minimum, esports can provide that type of club. You guys have done phenomenal work with the YTAC or the Charlotte Esports Club, in which a number of these kids can now participate with their peers and have that social engagement that normally they may not have had prior to. So I think at a minimum, that's something that should be seriously looked at. And as we continue to grow and process progress with some of the things that we're looking at, potentially looking at facilities where kids can come in, just like the mini camp that's going in now, where they can do some more traditional learning through the esports model safely, obviously, and kind of progress from there. Because there are a number of distinct opportunities nationally throughout the college landscape for them.
And I think that brings it full circle to the punchline where I started. This is one very specific example, but for all of you out here that are tuning in and trying to figure out how to innovate in an incredibly challenging educational environment right now, the punchline is you can't just do what you were doing before and deliver it via Zoom. You have to find ways to engage them. And engagement is what has primarily been lost in this current thing. They don't get to sit next to their friends in class. They don't get to go to lunch or go to the recess outside. And all they have left is the digital interaction and learning. So we have to find ways to intrigue them and grab their imagination. And I think that is the punchline. And this was a great specific example. Gentlemen, thank you all. Your work is much appreciated in this space. And that transitioned us very nicely to, if you are innovating in our other 2 of 3 topics, healthcare and retail,